All right, hello YouTube. Now let's talk about the stuff that I actually enjoyed. Um, yeah. So, yeah. But before I get into my best of the year, I just want to say I just want to give everybody a heads up here. There are some movies on my list that didn't make the cut. Unfortunately, fa- um The Conjuring Last Rites didn't make the cut. Companion didn't make the cut. Um, and Clown in a Cornfield didn't make the cut, unfortunately. Um, but if you guys, but I'm just going to say, if you guys hadn't seen, either of those, I very, very, very highly do recommend those. Um, they just didn't make my list. But anyway, yeah, so let's get started. Number one, or uh, yeah, number one, Warfare. So this movie, this is one of the best war movies I have ever seen in my life. Period. Um, this movie is an A24 movie. Um, And I remember seeing, I saw the advertisements, I saw the trailer for this, obviously earlier this year, when it was being advertised. And I immediately said, yeah, I am going to see this movie. And obviously, with a name like Alex Garland, attached to the movie, I had high expectations, and this did not disappoint. Um, this movie is actually uh, Alex Garland actually wrote and directed this movie with former Navy SEAL Ray Mendoza, and this movie is based, on the events in Iraq, that he went through. Or that he and his platoon went through. And I gotta say, I gotta say, there are very, very few war movies out there that make me feel, that made me feel like, that I was actually there. You know, there have only been a few war movies, that have managed to do that. Um, Mel Gibson's Hacksaw Ridge, um, Steven Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan, and Sam Mendes's 1917. Now, but this movie takes it to a whole new level. Um, Warfare is Warfare opens um, with Ray and his platoon, um, coming into a village in Iraq. Um, and they're just basically, like scoping the place out, basically. And it doesn't take very long at all for the action to kick off. The action kicks off, I think, I the action kicks off after, I want to say like 10 minutes into the movie, the action kicks off. And believe me when I say that when the action kicks off in this movie, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. Your heart is pounding, the entire time, you're watching this, because again, the movie is so, the movie might as well have been a documentary. I mean, it was that realistic. And, you know, like, you know how when you're playing, like a Call of Duty game or whatever, you're so like immersed in the action and what's going on, that that your heart is pounding, you're going, your heart is pounding, your head is spinning. That's what this movie that's what this movie did for me. I felt like I was there. And everything, down to the acting, um down to the acting, to the set design, to the uh and we can't talk about this movie without talking about the choreography, because the the choreography is some of the best I have ever seen in a movie, period. The choreography in this movie was absolutely phenomenal. There were so many times, there were so many times in this movie where I was like, "Oh my god, that is a really nice shot." Um, and it's such an incredible movie. Um, it's such an incredible movie. Everything down to the ladder uh, feels realistic. It's also one of the most violent war movies I've ever seen in my life, which really adds to the realism. And there were and I'm not gonna lie, a lot of scenes, there were a lot of scenes in this movie where I was like, "Oh my god, that is graphic." Um, like there was one scene in particular that really kind of grossed me out. Um, that really kind of grossed me out, where the they're taking care of their wounded, and they have to move them, and they have to move them, and the guy's legs are just all the guy's legs are all fucked up, and it was very, very, very graphic to watch. um but it completely captures the brutality of war, and the brutality of uh the the brutality and the cost of warfare. And it's such a brilliantly made movie. It really is. If you guys love war movies and you haven't seen this, shame on you. I, seriously, if you guys haven't seen this, watch it, because you will not be disappointed. Okay, my next movie, Drop. Um, so this movie, it is a Blumhouse movie, and you can probably tell it is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Um, this movie was directed by Christopher Landon, who is a very, 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 very good director. Um, he directed the Happy Death Day movies. He did Freaky. So he has a pretty good track record. Um, but this movie is, so you have a psychiatrist by the name of Violet Gates, who has a pretty abusive, um, who was at one point in a very, very abusive relationship. She hasn't been on a date in quite some time, but she ends up going out on a date with a photographer named Henry. Um, yeah, with a photographer named Henry, and they end up they end up going out to dinner. Um, they end up going out to dinner, and she gets she starts getting and while she's waiting for her date uh to show up, she's at the bar, and she starts getting these really really bizarre text messages from the bar, from her phone, while she's, waiting, for her date at the bar. And but those texts only, you know, but the text messages only become, more and more severe and start to become downright scary when they are shown to their table. Um, and she gets this she gets this text saying, basically saying that he are that this person that's sending her, the messages is actually at her home, with her 5-year-old son. and and she and this person basically says, you need to kill your date. And so um it is this it is this it has the feel of like an Alfred Hitchcock, of like an old school, like Alfred Hitchcock thriller. And it's a very 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 well written and very very well directed movie. um Christopher Landon, like I said, is a very very good director. um and if you guys, there are all sorts of, like plot twists and just, plot angles, that you'll just, never see coming. um and I saw this actually when I went to see Warfare. I ended up seeing two movies back to back. um and this movie is fantastic. It is, if you guys haven't seen this, I recommend the hell out of this. um Especially if you enjoy, psychological thrillers and and stuff like that. Now, my next movie, The Naked Gun 2025. um so this movie is of course a remake of the original. And I'm going to be completely honest. When I heard that they were remaking, excuse me, The Naked Gun, I was not happy. Um I was not I originally I was not excited for this movie. Um I did not think, that Liam Neeson, would be a good choice. I was completely against, the whole idea of this movie, even happening. But um and I became even more skeptical when I heard that Seth MacFarlane was going to produce it. But then the movie came out, and I saw the reviews, and I was like, "Oh my god, they actually did it." Um, this is how you remake a movie. This is how you remake a movie. This movie is very, very, very funny. Um, it stays pretty true to the feel, to the general spirit of the original, and that's there. there's no break in between jokes. Like, it is just literally joke after joke after joke after joke, which is, and much like the original, what they do is wicked dumb. Um, which is obviously, how it should be. I mean, it's the Naked Gun. Um, but the basic gist of this movie is, so Liam Neeson plays Frank Drebin Jr. Um, this one is about, the kids of all the original stars. Um, all the original stars. This is So like all the original stars, all the original characters from, the original movie are pretty much in this one. It's about their kids. Um Everyone is the son of someone in this movie. So you have Leslie you have Liam Neeson, who is the son of Leslie Nielsen's character. Um, you have Ed, who is the son of Ed, Ed's character in the I don't remember the actor's name, but his son. Um, his son. But the the basic gist of this movie is um Frank Drebin Jr., who was widowed recently. His wife died. um and you have Frank Drebin Jr. basically teaming up with Beth Davenport, played by Pamela Anderson. Um, and they are basically trying to find out who killed her brother, basically. And it is a um, more, obviously, it's a more like modernized take on the classic, Naked Gun movie. It is a it stays very, very true to like the overall, like spirit of the original. Some of the scenes in the movie um are even narrated by Liam Neeson. Are even narrated by Liam Neeson. Um, but it is just it a this is how you remake a movie. Uh y- this is how you remake a movie. It's so funny, and um it's so funny, and it's so dumb, and um it's so funny, and it's so dumb. And I really, really hope that they don't do another one, just because this one was just so good. um just because this one was just so good and so funny. And you, and obviously, because not everything in Hollywood needs a sequel. um so yeah, so if you guys loved the original, I guarantee you're gonna love this one. If you like Liam Neeson, you'll love it. If you loved the original Naked Gun, you'll love it. It's so a this this is how you remake a movie. um Now, my next one is actually one that I actually don't have, but Fantastic Four: First Steps. So this this movie went through massive reshoots, massive reshoots, massive rewrites. Um, and this movie was originally not a movie I was looking forward to. If you watch my channel, you know that I am not at all happy with the current direction of the MCU. Um, you know that, I have been ripping Marvel a New One quite a bit here on the channel. One of the first, actually, the first video I ever did was an entire rant on Marvel. Um, but this movie, you know, Fantastic Four is interesting because it, when I heard that this movie would be skipping the origin story, I was really, really turned off. And, as a fan, as a fan, as a fan and as a movie guy, I was very, very turned off because you obviously have, a lot of people, like casual moviegoers and MCU goers are obviously not going to know who the Fantastic Four are. You, Casual moviegoers are not going to know, who these characters are, outside of maybe, outside of maybe, outside of maybe, like the Fox movies, if they've seen them. But, my point being, you can't, you shouldn't bring in, a character without, without planning to flesh out, like who this character and or characters are, and what makes them tick. Um, but which brings me to the next, which brings me to my next point, and that's I'm very, very, I'm very, very happy that they at least, gave at least, that they gave you when the movie opens with, with the origin of the Fantastic Four and basically, like how they got their powers, where they came from, uh, where they came from. They don't go like all out, like into the origin, but they show you just enough to be able to go, oh, they show you just enough, uh, so people, so non, comic book fans, casual moviegoers can go, oh, okay, yep. So that's who they are. That's where they came from. That's how they got their powers. Boom, done. Let's move on. Um, so that, so I'm giving them, I'm giving them kudos for that because that was very, very well done. Um, this take on the Fantastic Four is a more established, take on the FF. Uh, it's a more established, take. I think, um, it's like an alternate timeline. It's like an alternate timeline. It's not, um, it's not part of the main, it's an alternate universe. And but this movie opens and Sue Storm finds out that she's pregnant. And and Silver Surfer comes to Earth, played by Julia Garner. Um and and she comes to Earth and she says, your planet has been marked for termination, by Galactus. And obviously, they have no idea what that means. They have no idea who Galactus is. They have no idea what he wants. So they go up to Earth, or, they go up to Earth. I'm all right. They go up to space to try to figure out, to try to meet with him and figure out what he wants. And Galactus in this movie, Galactus was the best part of the movie. Galactus steals every single scene that he's in. He is and Galactus was one of my biggest concerns, when this movie was announced, because I don't think I need to remind people the last time that we saw Galactus, he was a freaking cloud. Um, and But no, this movie, Galactus steals every single scene that he's in. He is the best friggin' part of this movie. You can tell that the movie was chopped up in the editing, because they did do, emergency. They did do, Marvel and Disney did do emergency reshoots literally like 3 weeks before this movie came out. Um, and that was because, and that was because I think Marvel and Disney saw the backlash that the, that this movie was getting. Like originally, this movie was going to be, they were going to dive into like the whole woke bullshit. And I mean, when I say woke bullshit, I mean stuff like, like Sue Storm was going to be the leader. Johnny Storm, Johnny Storm wasn't going to be a womanizer. Um, they were going to bring the fucking, like gender swapping and race swapping of characters, and just all the things, basically, all the ways, to just, piss off and alienate, your audience. And, but I think Marvel and Disney saw, the backlash that they were getting, with this movie. And they were like, you know what, we need to, we need to go back and fix this. Um, and I'm very happy to say that those reshoots paid off. This movie, while obviously not a perfect movie, um, not a perfect movie, and you can tell that this movie was chopped up in the editing department. But overall, I'd say it's a pretty cohesive and enjoyable movie. Um, apparently the um, part of the reshoots, I was really happy with how they handled Silver Surfer's backstory in the movie, which apparently was part of the reshoots, which I didn't even realize. Um, but no, I I was surprised on how much I enjoyed this. Um, I was not expecting uh I was not expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. Again, it's not a perfect movie by any means. Um, but I will say that uh I will say, for the time that they spend, reshooting it, and for the time that was spent, reshooting it, and and trying to fix it, and and everything else, I will say, I think for the most part, it paid off. The good outweighs the bad. Um, and even though, the movie, did bomb, at the box office, um, and one thing I've been noticing these days, this the new MCU formula seems to be the movie bombs at the box office, but it gets solid reviews. Fantastic Four got solid reviews, but it bombed. Thunderbolts got solid reviews, but it bombed. This seems to be the new MCU formula, and obviously, good reviews aren't what put good reviews obviously aren't what pay the bills, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, no, if you are a Fantastic Four fan, you will most probably enjoy this. I'm not the biggest Fantastic Four fan. I was really, really surprised at how much I enjoyed this. Um, Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards actually does a pretty good job. And I was actually one of the ones, I was one of the people that was, originally against this casting. A, because I thought he was too old. And B, because I'm kind of sick and tired of seeing Pedro Pascal in everything. Um, but no, but I mean, all around, I mean, everybody did a great job. Joseph Quinn did a great job as Johnny Storm. Vanessa Kirby did a great job as the Invisible Woman. Ebon Moss-Backrack does a great job as the Thing. They did tone down his character a little bit. Um, they did tone down his character a little bit, but other than that, I loved his overall design. The costumes look great. Um, the overall 60s, Jack Kirby, um, the overall 60s, Jack Kirby, vibe, vibe and set design looked absolutely fantastic. Um, yeah, no, I'm gonna recommend this and say, if you again, if you're a Fantastic Four fan, give it a shot. Um, if you just watch it, you'll enjoy it. Um, my next one is Predator Killer of Killers. So this is the first Predator animated this is the first Predator movie to be animated. And what this is it's basically an anthology movie. So what we have here is you have three different um the movie is split up into three different time periods. And so um you have a Viking, you have a Viking warrior, you have a samurai, obviously, in feudal Japan, and then you have a pilot in World War II. And these characters, and obviously each character, obviously, comes into contact with, a predator. Duh. Um, and but where this movie, you have three different chapters, basically, you have, think of the movie as like three, like, interactive, think of the movie as like three interacting, interlocking stories that all that all, by the end of the movie, all come together to make, one, cohesive, one cohesive, narrative, because that's basically what this movie is. Um, and no, one of the things that I really liked about this movie was each predator, that each character, came into contact with, across these three chapters was, no one predator was the same. And Dan Trachtenberg, obviously, the guy that's been doing Predator now for, I don't know how long has he been doing it now, the past 5 years, or I don't know, whatever. But however long, he's been doing it. But one of the many things that I really, really liked, or, one of the things, that Dan said, that this, or, that he was going to do, with Predator, when he came in, was he was going to keep delivering things that fans aren't expecting. And this movie definitely takes full advantage of that. Um, it is a very, very, very good looking movie. Um, for an animated, for an animated movie, it's very, very beautiful to look at. Um, it's also gory as hell. Um, but um, it is a very, very good, uh, it is a very, very good movie. And obviously, the final chapter, when all the, when these three characters are, are forced to come together, and work together, um, when they're forced to, to come together and, and work together as one. It's a very, very, very good, and entertaining movie. And it was a very, very, interesting idea. Uh, it was a very, very, interesting idea. I, and it's just, and if you guys haven't seen this, give it a watch, because it is very, very much worth your time. Um, Now we are moving on to Nobody 2. So I'm not going to say too much about this. Um, I'm not going to say too much about this one, just because I don't want to, I don't want to spend too much time on it. But this one is obviously a sequel to, the first Nobody. Hutch goes on a vacation with his family. Um, and Hutch goes on a vacation with his family. Shit hits the fan. Hutch is back doing, Hutch is back, or, Bob Odenkirk is back as Hutch, the, former assassin, kicking ass, and taking names. um I feel like, honestly, I felt like there was more action. The action sequences were bigger this time around compared to, the first movie. Um, I felt like there was a lot more going on this time around in the action sequences in this one compared to the first one. Um, and honestly, I thought that this one was better than the first one, to be honest. Um, and I love the first one. But yeah, no, if you guys enjoyed the first one, um, and his wife actually plays, a much bigger role in this movie than in, the first movie. And that's one of the reasons why I actually liked, this one better. Um, but yeah, no, if you guys haven't seen this, if you guys love the first one, give this one a watch, because this one I thought was even better than the first one. Um, all right, now we are moving on to The Toxic Avenger 2025. Um, so this movie, excuse me, is a I think I think it's a remake of the original. And here we have and here we have a janitor by the name of Winston Goose, who is a single stepdad uh, to his stepson Wade. And Winston finds out that he has a form of cancer in his brain. And he is he's pretty much not in the best place. He has been just recently widowed. His wife had died. His wife just passed a year ago. Um, and he and his stepson are very, very much, are very much, still feeling that loss. Um, Winston doesn't really know what he's doing. He doesn't really know like how to be there for his stepson. Um, and he's uh but his life goes down the shitter when he finds out that he has like a form of cancer. um at least i at least I think it's a form of cancer. um and he ends up having a hazardous accident into some toxic waste, and comes out and becomes the Toxic Avenger. um and it's a very, very, very funny very, very funny movie. It does not take itself seriously at all. It is very, 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 very gory. um it is very, very, very gory. um but it is funny as hell. Peter Dinklage is fantastic in this movie. um Kevin Bacon, who plays the film's, main bad guy, um, is just pretty much nothing is nothing is taken seriously in this movie. It it's kind of like The Naked Gun, in the sense that it's just literally like joke after joke after joke. Um and I was laughing my ass off throughout when I was watching this um in the theater. And the studio behind this movie, Cineverse, who is doing the new Silent Hill, who's doing the new Silent Hill movie that comes out in January, um who did Terrifier 3. um I they did an absolutely incredible job with with this movie. And it is so funny, and it is so brilliant. And if you guys haven't seen this, give this movie a watch, because it is phenomenal. Or it is so good. um Now, the next movie I'm going to be talking about is I is another one that I don't have here, and that is because it hasn't been released yet on DVD and Blu-ray, and that is the new Silent Night, Deadly Night. So this movie is I believe it's the second remake of Silent Night, Deadly Night. Um this movie or the basic gist of this movie. So Billy Chapman, so Billy Chapman witnesses his parents' murder by someone dressed in a Santa Claus costume. But before his parents, but before the guy dies, Billy ends up taking his hand, and Billy gets and Billy ends up getting, possessed by basically like the spirit of, not the spirit, but um, Charlie, Charlie, the guy who murdered Billy's parents. He ends up, his soul basically ends up taking over Billy's body, and he kind of ends up, getting possessed by this, by this like spirit almost. Uh, think of it, and they do form a bond, but it's they do form a bond, but it's kind of like think of it almost as like a Venom and Eddie Brock type of, relationship, where it's, uh where you have, like this voice in your, where you have, like this voice in your head, like this, like this other, entity, like taking over your body. But obviously it's not, it's not, an alien symbiote. It's something else. Um, and it makes for a really, really, really funny and interesting dynamic. Um, because and much like, Toxic Avenger, I really found myself laughing my ass off, several times, throughout this movie. Um, and but it's not just, it's not just the trauma, or, it's not just, Charlie's, spirit that drives, Billy to kill. It's also his own, trauma, in his own, or, in his own, um, trauma, and his own, um, his own, desires as well. Um, it, and unlike but this movie, this remake is very, very different from the original, because um Billy Chapman was B- Billy Chapman was basically an anti-villain, in a sense, like he wasn't. And by anti-villain, I mean, like he did kill, a lot of people. uh he did kill, a fair amount of people, that deserved it, but he also killed, a fair amount of people who also didn't necessarily deserve it. um but at the same time, they were people that, he was taught from an early age, you know people that, because, in the original movie, Billy grew up, after his parents were murdered. He grew up in a very, very abusive environment, and was taught, a very, very specific set of rules. And that's, sex is naughty. People, who are being naughty, need to be punished. And those methods are, those methods, that are quote unquote, naughty, questionable at best. Um, but he ends up, but Billy ends up, in this movie, he ends up meeting a woman named Pamela. Um, he ends up getting a job at, um, he ends up getting a job um, at this store. I forget what it's called, and he ends up falling in love with the daughter of his boss. Uh, she also works there, and the interesting thing about this remake is he's not killing anyone who doesn't deserve it. Like uh, he's not killing anyone who doesn't, genuinely deserve it. Like in this one, uh, everybody that he kills in this movie, without a doubt deserves it. It's like Dexter, in a sense. Um, in a sense, he's not killing anyone, who doesn't deserve it. And it's a very, very interesting, um, direction to take this remake in. And I was fascinated throughout. I was hooked the entire time when I was watching it. Um, and it's a very, very different movie, compared to, the original, but it's a fun movie. It was just a fun and enjoyable, an enjoyable movie. And if you guys, haven't seen it, um, there's also a great deal of humor in the movie. So if you guys haven't seen it, watch it, because I recommend the hell out of it. Um, my next movie is Ballerina. Um, so this movie comes from the world of John Wick, and you have um, you have Anna de Armas's character named Eve, who begins training as an assassin after her father is murdered. Uh, and that's another interesting thing about this movie is, John Wick. When in the John Wick movies, we don't really know about, where John Wick came from. We don't know a whole lot about, like his backstory, or anything, anything before, anything before, um, anything before, what we see, in those movies. And but this time with Ballerina, they actually take the time to flesh out, like her backstory, where she came from, who she is. And it makes for a really, really interesting movie. And of course, she crosses paths, with John Wick. Keanu Reeves is in the movie, and I had fun with this. I don't understand why it bombed. I don't understand, why this bombed. I had a lot of fun with this. And Anna de Armas is such a badass in this movie. Um, yeah, no, I genuinely had fun with this. Again, I really don't understand why it bombed. Um, so my next movie is one that I actually don't have in front of me. Um, but it is um one that I actually don't have in front of me, but um it is Thunderbolts. So this movie, as I said in my review of Thunderbolts, this was everything that I wanted in James Gunn's Suicide Squad movie that obviously we didn't get. and that's deep character development, deep character development, compelling storyline, and a proper redemption arc for these characters. And because I, because the Suicide Squad is basically what, Thunderbolts is. It's Marvel's take on, on the Suicide Squad. And it is done it is done exceptionally well. Um this movie was part of like the massive overhaul, um that Marvel, that the MCU is getting. Supposedly there's like this grand plan to try to save, save and fix, the MCU. So, make of that what you make of that, what you will. Um but no, it was also a very, very, very good looking movie. Everything felt, everything felt real. Um everything felt real. Everything felt, uh you know, everything everything felt just, everything felt very, very real. Everything felt, um there was almost, like a Batman Year One type feel to it, in the sense that, these are all characters obviously without, without superpowers. Um these are all characters, without superpowers, with the exception of one character, uh who kind of turns out to be the villain. I put an emphasis on kind of because it's not entirely his fault. Um, if you've seen the movie, you'll know who I'm talking about. Um, but it is a very, very good, uh, it is a very, very, it's one of the best movies that Marvel has come out with in a very, 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 very long time. Um, and and originally I was not excited for this movie. Originally, I had every intention of skipping the movie, but then, I ended up seeing, I ended up seeing the reviews, and everybody, saying, how good it was. And I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And I'm really, really glad that I did, because the movie was so incredible and it was just so phenomenally well done. Um, and yeah, and Century Century's costume in this movie is one of the best looking comic book costumes ever to be, ever to be seen on screen. I mean, talk about comic accurate. I mean, holy crap. Um, yeah, no, this movie, if you guys haven't seen this, give it a watch. If you guys have been disappointed with, the MCU in the past, I guarantee you, you will not be disappointed with this movie. Um, I recommend the hell out of this. Just, give it a shot, because I think you are going to love it. Um, okay, now my next movie, and and this is and this might be like in my top, like, probably like in my top 3 best movies that I've seen this year, and that is 28 Years Later. So I am a huge, huge, huge fan of the first 2 movies. 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. Um and quite honestly, I did not think a third movie was ever going to get made. Um but then, when I heard, that they then when I heard, that what is his name? Danny Boyle. Um when I heard, from Danny Boyle that at least I think it might have been him, or it might have been uh it might have been somebody else. I don't remember, but um somebody finally said that there is a script, that someone finally said, that they finally had a script. And I and when I heard that, I got very, 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 very excited. And when I and when I heard when Danny Boyle was coming back, I was like, oh wow. Um, so um, this movie continues. I guess you could say like the anthology of the 28 universe, whatever you want to call it. I have no idea if there's a name for it or not. That's just what I'm going to call it. But so this movie, you have it's been almost 3 decades now since the virus, uh, you know, since the, since the rage virus escaped, what is it, that biological weapon? Yeah, yeah, since that biological weapon escaped the laboratory. And you have a basically I'm not gonna spend too much time talking about this one because I already talked about it before, but you have a mother and a son. You have a mother who is very, very sick, um, who is very, very sick. I think she has cancer. Um, and they and the son is basically trying to get her to a doctor. uh he hears about this doctor, supposedly, I think, like on the other side of the island, and they end up, going on, the journey together to basically try to figure out, uh if this doctor, can help her, basically. And um it's a very, very, and again, I'm a huge, 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 huge fan of these movies. um and this one, I think this one might just be the best one so far, at least I think. um and and it's a these movies obviously take place in a, post-apocalyptic, uh setting. So you have, and it's very, it's such a good movie. It really is. Obviously, it does set up a sequel. um this and 28 years later, Bone Temple. I think the next one is called both of those movies were shot back to back. So the second movie will come out, I think it comes out next month, January 17th or something like that. um but it is such a good movie. It is a very, 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 very good movie. um if you are if you love these movies as much as I do, you'll definitely enjoy this. um if you love horror, you'll enjoy this. If you love, if you love, stuff like, like The Walking Dead, zombie movies, all that other kind of stuff, you will definitely enjoy this movie, because this movie was friggin' fantastic. um and my last movie that I'm going to be talking about is Killing Faith. So this movie is a Western, like a Western thriller type, type movie. And this movie, the basic gist of this movie, you have, so there is this plague. Um, there is this plague ravaged against the deserts of the Arizona Territory in 1849. And you have a doctor, whose name I don't remember at the moment, um, but he is played by Guy Pearce. And technically, he's not a very good doctor. A lot of people don't really like him. He even pretty much knows, that he's not a very good doctor. Um, but he is basically this woman, and her daughter come to him, for help, basically, uh, come to him for help, basically. And they she has this very, very rare condition. Basically, anything that she touches, anything this girl, for whatever reason, is incapable of physical human contact. Anything that she touches dies. Um, so they end up going, so the mother ends up paying uh the doctor, who I think is um the doctor who was like an ex I think he's like an ex I think he's like an ex, like, war hero or something, or something along those lines. Um he She ends up paying him. She's like, look, you help me get my daughter, to see this priest, that supposedly, can cure her. I'll pay you, X amount of money. Uh, I'll pay you, X amount of money, and blah, blah, blah. Um, and that's basically what the plot is. Um, it's a very, very, very well written movie. Um, it's especially great for people, like myself, who just, love westerns, and who love, like action thrillers, and everything along those lines. Um, it's a it's a very compelling story. The plot goes to places that you aren't, you know the the movie story will take you, to places that you will not at all expect. I remember the first time when I watched this, there were a lot of moments where I was going, wow, I was not at all expecting that. um and it's a very, very, very good movie. um Very, very, very entertaining, and very much worth your time. Again, if you love westerns, you love action thrillers, you will definitely enjoy this. Because I definitely did. um but the movie raises the question, is it just, everybody believes, that this child is cursed, because again, everything, that she touches dies. So, it raises the question, is, can this person be saved? Is she worth the risk? Is she worth helping? Is she worth, uh is she worth saving? And it's a very, 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 very well done movie. It's well written, it's well acted, the story is well paced. Um, it is a very, very well done movie. I was really surprised on how much, because when I saw this, when I got it in the mail, I literally didn't know anything about this movie. I just saw that it got great reviews and decided to buy it. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll, a Western, action thriller. Yeah, sign me up. Um, and it's a very, very good movie. It is. It's very, very well acted. Uh, it's well acted. It's well paced. Again, it's very, very much worth your time. So I am going to, I'm going to recommend the hell out of this and just say, if you haven't seen it, watch it. But yeah, anyway, so that will do it for my best of the year. Again, there were a lot of movies that I wanted to put on this list that didn't make the cut, unfortunately. Predator Badlands didn't make the cut. Companion didn't make the cut. Clown in a Cornfield didn't make the cut. Um, um, Conjuring Last Rites didn't make the cut, unfortunately. But those are all fantastic movies. If you guys haven't seen any of those, definitely check those out. Those are very much worth your time as well. Um, I just, there were a lot of movies that I wanted to put, on this list for best of the year. I just, due to, time restrictions and, everything else, I just couldn't do it. Um, but yeah, so let me know what you guys think. Let me know let me know, some of the movies on your list. What were some of your favorite movies from this year? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I will talk to you guys later, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.